if you avoid a tough conversation like the plague, you are not alone. Whether it's with a friend or a spouse, a neighbor, maybe even your boss, it's normal to not want to have confrontation. And if you don't want to confront and you don't want to avoid, what do you do? My next guest believes there's more than one option that lets you speak up and keep the relationship strong. That's the power of a learning conversation. This approach can turn difficult discussions into opportunities for growth. Chelsea Anderson is joining me through the screen to help explain. Hi, Chelsea. Welcome into Studio 5.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, to get started, I love this topic and I love this idea, but let's start with a definition. Tell us, what is a learning conversation?
Basically, a learning conversation is kind of this secret third option when there's something that's making us uncomfortable. Usually we feel like we have to either avoid it entirely or confront someone, but a learning conversation offers this more low stakes way to gather information without making accusations of another person or even of ourselves. So for example, if you were left off an important meeting, you might think I wasn't important enough or someone didn't want me there. And, that's a lot of assumptions. And you might think I could confront this person or just ignore it. But there's a third option of just asking why. And I think for a lot of situations, this doesn't feel super obvious because we think we know exactly why things happened. And that can be part of what makes conversations difficult. But if you go in just genuinely aiming to learn more, it opens this kind of secret third door of communication.
I love that. So you really are emphasizing the importance of curiosity. So how are some ways that we can express that curiosity in these conversations?
Yeah, I think sometimes these questions can feel almost passive aggressive if we aren't genuinely curious. Like if we say, why did you leave me off that meeting? That already kind of has an accusation as if it was intentional, if we go with that metaphor still. So curiosity is really coming from a place of, hey, I wasn't in that meeting. I kind of wanted to be there. Or is there more context that I need? Just taking kind of accusations out of it and having the actual goal of gathering more information rather than confirming what we think is why curiosity is so important, because then it gives the other person to space to say their side of the story without feeling like they're backed against a wall.
Right, because I'm sure it could feel defensive otherwise. So if you go into it with a genuine, I just want to know more about this situation, that will probably open the door better for you.
Exactly.
I love that. So do you have any tips of what we should do if it feels like it's awkward or maybe it's not an appropriate time to ask the question when we're kind of in these circumstances?
Yeah, so I think some of that awkwardness or feeling like it's inappropriate to ask a question can come from something inside of us that is scared that our identity is going to be risked. So if it feels awkward to talk to a partner or a friend or a boss or a coworker about something, it's probably because there's a piece of our identity as a good friend, a good coworker, someone who's valued, someone who's grateful, someone who's easy to work with. Something about that is going to be at risk if we have this conversation, which is why it feels awkward or maybe even scary. And how you get past that is by developing what is called like an and stance.
Okay.
Because the answer is that sometimes the conversation might not go the way you hoped. Maybe you were left off that meeting and that can be very hard to stomach. But if you say, okay, I can not be in every meeting and be valued at this company, or I can be good at my job and not have been needed in this situation, having that balance, that and really helps. Or if it was a friend who hurt your feelings, saying, okay, they couldn't prioritize me and they care about me. It's not so black and white. Having that and stance helps the conversation feel less awkward because there's less at risk.
I love that. It's that idea that two things can be true at the same time, right? That's amazing. What are some mistakes that people may run into when they're trying to learn how to do a conversation this way?
I think one is that the other person will automatically be caught up and know what you're talking about and be coming at it from that same kind of grounded stance that you are. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you might go into a learning conversation that's going to be difficult for two people. Maybe there is hurt or there is tension on both sides, and understanding that the other person might not meet you quite where you're at yet. So not taking that personally, that's a big tip. And then the other one is to to just not assume so much. I think even when we go in with questions, our questions are already based on our assumptions. So stripping that back and saying, what are the true questions I could ask about this situation? And then the last tip really is to understand, take the time to understand why it is upsetting for you, because it might not be obvious at first. We just know it's uncomfortable, but taking a second to be like, okay, what's at risk for me here, identity wise, in this conversation? And how could I help myself get an and stance so that it's not quite as scary?
I really love that. That takes some ownership onto yourself for this conversation too. It's not just putting it on one person or the other.
Exactly.
So lastly, I would ask, how has this helped you in your personal life, and kind of, how has this benefited your life when you've kind of come at conversations like this in that way?
It has helped so much with my anxiety because I'm not a confrontational person. And I think there were so many times when I just didn't investigate a situation because I was afraid of what I would find out about myself. And I don't think I even fully, I know that I didn't fully understand that. Something in my body was like, avoid, avoid, avoid. Don't talk about that. That's too hard. And that would give me anxiety. And now it's much easier for me to say, okay, what about this is so triggering for me? Okay, maybe it's that I think, it's hard for me to have a conversation about finances because I think I'm bad with money and I think that that's immoral and I think I'm going to be judged and like all these kind of bad things. And to take that and say, okay, I could have, maybe spent over my budget and I'm still a good person. I'm not a failure morally. Like, to just ground myself in that and stance gives me less anxiety. And understanding that I'm not one thing or another. I think before really kind of learning and implementing this, I would constantly flip back and forth between thinking I'm a good friend, I'm a bad friend, I'm good at my job, I'm bad at my job, I'm a good person, I'm a bad person. And that flip-flopping is very stressful because you're judging yourself the whole time. And now I kind of understand not every action and every conversation defines me.
I love that. So that's a really amazing thing for us to kind of look at it through our own lens and see how we can implement this into our lives. I really love this concept. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Where can we follow you for more?
I am at Chelsea_explains on Instagram and at Chelsea explains it all on TikTok.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.